Okay, hopefully you guys see my deck properly. So, oh shoot, give me a second. Okay. Basically, this presentation is about the down-to-earth perspective on costs and risks you need to take for your e-commerce growth. And I have combined here a lot of my thoughts and a lot of like things that I'm discussing with different founders and boards who often come to me at the early stages. Actually, I'm very happy when people come to me at these early stages and they want to get some advice and they want to exercise some different scenarios. I think that's very cool. I mean, I would love to be that person that helps because that's where I also thrive. And these are the conversations and talks I love to have. But I also think it's very mindful when business owners are not jumping into the hot water, but looking at launching an e-commerce and online store uh, by analyzing the realities of the business and trying to understand really what's the complexity of this world of customer acquisition and retention, because actually this complexity is only rising and what's out there, it's competitive. And if you want to make a mark with your business, you will have to get ready for it. So let's start with let's start the presentation. Let's go into it, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. So let me start with some like building some sort of scenario. So do you guys know that majority of retail sales are actually happening still offline? And I think that's very important to understand that online sales, in terms of retail in Europe, are making only a 15% of all sales. So that means that, still the majority is happening offline, and obviously online sales will grow and they will grow much faster. I mean, like over more than 3 times faster than the offline sales. So there's going to be the world where more people will be making sales online, obviously, at some point. I mean, interesting fact is that it's growing 30%, 13% in Europe, and it's at 15% in Europe. But if you look at Asia, there are some of the highest growing online sales countries. And Asia is growing like massively. It's like, they kind of skip this moment of using the desktop and move directly into smartphones. Maybe in a way, like some of the people who will be born in Asia, they will skip the, process of buying some of the things offline and they will jump right into the online purchases for some of the product categories. I don't know. It's just some kind of a theories, but we have to understand that this is all growing. Yet, and other important data to understand is that 47% of online sales are happening on the biggest online marketplaces, which are obviously Amazon, eBay, Walmart, recently Shine, like some stuff like that. And of course, AliExpress, when we talk about Asia, we can forget that. So in the end of the day, comparing to selling via these marketplaces or digital distributors who have like a huge, already a huge presence, having an own online store, an own e-commerce requires some initial investment, requires know-how, and a long-term commitment. So it's like not all the companies and brands are deciding to do it, obviously more and more, but like I hope we see like this big picture. So there's a couple of questions that arise. So first question is, what are the most common scenarios of this online store launches? I will cover that. And what makes these e-commerce businesses grow? Like what makes them grow? Not just be there and like, oh, we have a domain, we have like an online store and it's like making, 20, max 20,000 euro a month and it's there. Like we don't know like what is it? But what makes them grow into an interesting business for the investor? And what cost versus results should you expect? And finally, what are the most common mistakes? So I will not go again into like my life story because I was talking about it, blah, 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 right before this presentation. If you guys have been here before like the start of this presentation, but basically I'm the founder of Tribe 47 that executes growth and launch for different online businesses. I've been in digital marketing for over 15 years now, I started at Mind Valley, where I was doing a lot of product and website launches at some point of my life. So, I mean, I kind of, grew in this phase of launching. And I'm also the founder of PortalYogi, which is like the digital yoga platform in Poland that was already used by over 70,000 of customers. So that's like me. And as Stripe 47, we have worked with over 200 different brands. And all these brands were actually online brands who had some online shops, some sort of e-commerce, like you can see some examples of them. So whatever I'm presenting here is a combined experience from them. I mean, I will not be sharing any financial data of any of these companies. So don't worry if some of our clients is here, like, don't you worry, like nothing like that is here. If you know me, you know that I'm always doing like my financial simulations of the costs and results, and I'm going to be showing some pieces of that. But yeah, it's based on my overall experience. So now, let's start with this first question of what are the most common launch scenarios? Like, what does it mean to launch an online store? Because I think it's like important to see that there's very different cases out there. And the first of them, I called new brand from scratch. I mean, the most simple scenario, like simple from understanding it, but difficult from the actual thing, because like we have some totally new brand, we have a new market where the brand hasn't been, and a new channel. So, there's zero, nothing, and now we have a new brand that is entering some market and is entering online. So basically, these are often some D2C, very often some D2C brands, often some hot FMCG categories, not to care. You guys are often joining our events, like you were there, a brand called Kaya, who also been there. They were in this position as well. There's some new categories or innovations like Psibufet or Matchfeed. Guys from these companies have been at our events as guests too. So it's a difficult scenario. The main leverages are the timing. Of course, it's my perspective, right? So also take it into consideration. And the founding team, like who does it? And if the timing is right, if the product really matches the market, if this product market fit is there to find. But usually these are the high pressure projects because sometimes they are funded. There's a high pressure on growth. There's also high pressure on reaching the break-even point about which I will talk about today. And that's where this project is a little bit stressful, but fun. There is also a second case kind of connected to the first one, much less common, which maybe it's actually common, but we don't know. That's also an interesting thing. It's when we have a new sub-brand. So we have some sort of a brand that decides to launch a sub-brand. So that's what I was essentially doing when I worked at Mind Valley. And, we were launching a new domains and new brands of courses, like, for example, Silva Mind System and Silva Method later, that was a part of a Mind Valley. So Mind Valley was like the whole kind of parent company, and we were launching these sub-brands. In the beginning, no one knew it was the Mind Valley behind it. Later, it started to kind of put it together. But there is this case that there's a new brand. There is an existing market. So there is a brand that already exists in the market. The parent brand exists in the market. And finally, there is a new channel. So, this online channel wasn't used before. And basically, from the clients that we have worked with recently as Tribe 47, Żabka już and Dario or something like that. So, there is a Żabka group, Żabka brand, which is actually very known. And they're launching some sub-brand that is supposed to enter the digital market. So that's actually a very interesting case. For some reason, I think underused by many of the FMCG companies. And I would love to encourage more of them to do it more often, especially those that don't have an online presence as of yet. So some of the main characteristics is that it actually can leverage the existing brand very well. There's usually, from my experience, a high pressure on growth because, the parent brand is doing it for some reason. And there's also seeking the synergy with the parent brand. So it's very important to seek the synergy because the synergy can actually offset some of the costs. And I will not go deep into the culture of the companies, but very often there could be a challenge with a culture because let's say this parent brand is more traditional and then they want to launch an e-commerce, which requires much more dynamic team approach, work culture. So the idea of how to build the teams, like if it's a good idea, for example, to outsource this growth work, it's an interesting topic to cover. And we actually have done a presentation about that, which I will link inside this presentation. Then we've got another quite simple case and common. It's an existing brand, new market. So we've got existing brand, something that already exists, like Amazon, and they're entering a new market. And they're entering the new market with the channel that they already know. So they use this channel to enter their first very market where they have entered from scratch. So these would be usually the foreign brands entering a new market. I put here Too Good To Go, Netflix, because in the end of this, even we've got Magda Marzec in the panel, and she was a part actually of two of these launches. So I think she will be able to share a little bit. Temu recently in Poland is a brand that just entered Amazon. Volt, like we have been a part of a Volt launch in Poland, Stripe 47. So it was like an international brand entering a new one. And there's some different characteristics. I think here important part is that usually there is some leverage, and that leverage comes from the know-how and from the team, from the fact that that company already did it in some other market. And then we've got a scenario which recently became my favorite because I think it's the most complex, actually. We've got existing brand, we've got existing market, but a new channel. So it's a brand that didn't have their own e-commerce store, but now they want to have it and they want to make it big. And like, for example, recently Biedronka in Poland is like a big case because they never had their totally own e-commerce store, and now they have actually opened it. Like there's lots of talk about it online, like what they're doing, like some high order value required for a free shipping, whatever. Walmart did it at some point. It was very successful in the United States, but there are also like other brands. I mean, today in the panel discussion, we're gonna have Waldek Pilch from Formats, and Formats is the brand that is doing it right now. They're in this launch phase of being present in the market for many years, being offline, selling through many distributors, and now they actually have their own e-commerce, and we're cooperating with them to make it successful. So main characteristics here are like there could be different goals. I will mention it in a second, but I think what's most important is that the synergy between the existing sales channels and this new e-commerce channel is both the opportunity and challenge. And I will dive deeper into it on the panel discussion because we're going to have Baldek here, and that's a great opportunity to dive into it. So we've got these four scenarios, and basically just zooming on this last one, there could be some different reasons why, for example, a successful offline brands launch their own online store. And I think it's also another important and interesting case because these reasons vary and they're just more complex than a cash. And I think that puts having your own e-commerce store in a slightly different perspective because obviously the first reason and the goal why they do it is generating additional revenue source and market share. But the second, very often, it's just access to real-time customer data. You can get that from marketplaces. You can get that if you're selling only through retail chains. You can't get that kind of great data about how, what, when your customers are buying and using your product. And you can always send an email to all your customer database if you don't have that base. And that base will be created only if you're going to be having your own online store. You have higher chance to build customer loyalty because you have more tools in your own shops that you will have elsewhere. You can do new product tests. So you can test something in your online store before you launch it, for example, to the retail. And finally, you can try to offset marketing costs like brand awareness by directing the users to your online store. So there's lots of reasons why offline brands could do it. It's just that, the question remains, like how they should do it to make it even successful. So there's like three concepts I want to quickly browse through to give you a perspective on what makes an e-commerce business grow. I mean, we could have an hour talk about it, seriously. Like it's like that. But the first thing is to understand like what are the stages of the e-commerce growth. Arek will zoom on the first one in the presentation that comes after that. And it's a launch phase or otherwise product market fit. In Arek's presentation, Arek's and Max, you will see the product market fit name. Launch is the name I prefer, because I got used to it. But the main goals of this are to look for a scalable acquisition channel and to see if that really is there, and building some e-commerce infrastructure. And to really find the scalable acquisition channel, you have to do many tests around data. That's what Arek gonna talk about. But later, once you're actually done that, you should start scaling advertising budgets. You should add new acquisition channels more than you had before. And you should focus on retention mechanisms in some of the businesses. And finally, when your business reaches the maturity, that's the time to enter new markets, to add significant other channels, like, for example, offline, if you haven't been there before, and maybe launching some sub-brands or something, or new product category that is very different. Once you already got that, you are there. You are making money. Your business is healthy, is generating healthy profits for them, for the owner. And this first very difficult phase that could last for a while, even up to a year. And that is the frustrating, crazy, interesting, costly part. But it's very important to do it right. And the growth phase can last up to years. I've seen businesses that are still growing. They haven't reached that maturity. They haven't really fall from the curve. They are still on the curve. So that really depends on the category, but at some point obviously it happens, but I think we're going to dedicate a different event to this. Now, there are two, what are the phases? Now, there are the two most important top level metrics that you should start looking at and thinking about from the start as a founder, not as like the, growth manager too, but they're going to have more stuff and are going to talk about it in his presentation. But now is the question to you guys, if you remember what these metrics are, because we have been delivering presentations about them before with Arek. So the smart of you out there, I'm not saying if you don't know, you're not smart, but the ones who remember probably already know. But the first one is the customer lifetime value. So how much this customer going to be worth for me? And it's important to measure and to measure and to plan it right and to understand it right, because it's not just about the revenue. It's revenue minus the actual product delivery cost. There are going to be some costs that are related to the product. So it's usually the product contribution margin times the amount of purchases the customer is supposed to make in your store during their lifetime. And the second one is actually how much you are paying to acquire that customer. And the most true metric of that is actually the division of all the acquired clients in a particular month divided by all the costs that your growth team bared. And in the beginning, it's insane. And it can't be different, seriously, because there's many costs you will have to bear. But at some point, you're looking to have this metric at a really healthy level. And the most important is to actually measure the proportion of these two. And the question is like, what should be that proportion? And obviously the answer is like, it depends when. So, in most of the businesses, especially if the fast-moving consumer goods category, in the beginning, the customer, you might not even offset the acquisition cost with the first order. So you have to think about like what's your e-commerce system is set for? How have you built it to make sure that this customer comes back? If that's your business model, obviously. So it depends when, and you can't expect the same ratio of customer lifetime value to the customer acquisition cost in the month 6 of your business experience and in the third year of your business experience. You should have and set different expectations. So now, the final concept is the 9 areas that I believe every e-commerce should cover if they want to set themselves for growth. And let's just quickly browse through them and jump into how much it costs to actually make them happen, because I know you guys are looking for that insights from this presentation. So launch and growth management, obviously, people who manage the whole mess around it and make sure it's actually not a mess. Website building and optimization, communication and creatives related to both brand and performance marketing, marketing automation and user database management, advertising on various platforms. Because if you stick to just one, you're posing some risk on your business. But to, for example, master these two, which are usually Google and some paid social platform, requires putting some effort into it from the start. SEO, data tracking and analysis, influencers and PR management, and finally, own social media channels. Maybe there could be more areas, like I'm happy for you guys to throw in something that I have forgotten, but for me, it kind of puts into perspective. It's for me to like my quick check, if I talk to some business, have they thought about all these? Or maybe not. So now the question remains, if you have covered all these things that are responsible for setting your business for growth, what are the realistic expectations in terms of cost and results? So let's build a simple case for that. We've got 10 minutes, we're gonna do it. So let's take the simplest one, like new brand from scratch, the first scenario I shared with you. Dietary supplement brand. From scratch, non-existent, new market, new channel. High product contribution margin, over 50%, good for them. Average order value at the start of the business, about 40 euro, 170 zlotys, and it's growing. Not dramatically, 10% from this in the year 3. Could be better, but average new client acquisition, month-to-month growth in the very beginning is very aggressive. Obviously, it's not difficult to scale, like 50 clients to 100. It starts to be more difficult once you actually get to some volume, especially if the product market fit is there. So in the beginning, it's 50%, then it drops to average maybe 25%, then it drops to about 5%, and it drops to 2%. Like it's gonna happen like, of course, like step by step, but if you are really scaling, like, in the year 3, your new clients will not be growing month to month in such a crazy rate. The blended paid media cost per acquisition, which is the cost of your paid media, of your entire advertising budget, what you give to Google, what you give to Facebook, divided by all the acquired clients, starts here at 200 zlotys. So look, it's actually higher than the average order value, even so I'm not making any money on the first purchase. But it drops about 50% by the year 3. And it drops because, first of all, we already entered the marketing engines. And what's interesting, in the very beginning, if your brand is totally new, you will not even be able to scale advertising because Google, Meta, they will lock your scalability. And a lot of businesses don't really understand it, that in the very beginning, like, the scaling will be starting from a very small numbers because these budgets will be only available at the small scale. You can't really scale massively in these first 6 months. You will have to scale. You can scale massively month to month, but you will start with a very low number. it also drops because if you have invested in SEO, if you have built your email list, not of clients only, but also of leads, like you're going to be offsetting this cost of advertising with other free for you channels. So it's possible to draw, but if you're not doing all these things, like you might actually experience that you're dependent on the paid channels only, and the cost of paid advertising, they're gonna be only growing. I mean, they're growing. So the fact that you actually can drop that means that a lot of your clients in the year 3 are not coming only from your paid advertising. And finally, by the end of year 3, majority of revenue comes from repeated clients. So actually the new clients in the year 3 are like maybe 20% of the clients that you're acquiring. The rest of the revenue comes from clients that were already in your database. In this particular example that I have simulated, in the end of the year 3, it's about 3.5 orders per an average client. Could be maybe better, but because majority of clients you're acquiring in the later stages, that's probably how it's going to look like. It might change with time. So now, what's the simulation of possible cost and revenue? And then disclaimer, guys, it's some sort of simulation taking into consideration cost, results I have seen. So year 1 will be tough. Probably you can cross the 1 million in the revenue. You can build a significant client base, but your costs will exceed your revenue. Like you will not be making money in this first year. And the people and tech costs will actually be higher than your advertising. And it's a very common thing that I've seen around founders, like how possible I should be paying a fraction of my advertising costs to people and to technology. That's how it will look like at some point, but in the beginning, that's not how it looks. Now, year 2, if you've done the right things in the year 1, can already start being interesting. Your CLV versus CAC ratio can actually go over 1. And you can reach those months finally in a year 2 when you're making 1 million zlotys per month, which is about what, 220,000 euro. I'm not saying it always happens, but if you do the right things, it's possible, it's accessible in the year 2. But the business start being really interesting, most likely in the end of year 3. That's kind of the realities I have seen. And that's only where you can start aiming for this mythical CLV to CAC ratio that everyone looks for. But also look that here, the cost of people and tech, they're kind of the same over the months. What's really scaling is the cost of advertising. It's scaling the most rapidly between year 1 and 2, and dropping and scaling a bit less aggressively for the year 3. Now, what is hidden under these first year's growth costs under people and tech, from highest to lowest? Like I didn't put like the numbers there because it kind of will vary a bit, but you can see like what's the most expensive, what's the least. Technology, that's what's the most important and really expensive at the start if you want to build it right. Creatives, a lot of people don't really believe that, but in the very beginning, you have to do a lot of tests in terms of your communication, and you will have to create and manage the creative process. And it can be really a black hole of costs if you don't manage it right. But in the end of the day, very often finding the way how to sell your product will take a lot of creativity, and these costs will take management, production, and also the ideation. And finally, there's growth management, performance management, marketing automation, SEO, social media and influencers, and analytics support. So that's what's hidden under that number of 1.5 million zlotys or 320,000 euro, of course, forgot the K. So now these are 2 slides from a different presentation that I have given. I have connected it here. where I was talking about the average cost of teams executing growth in e-commerce businesses, and really how these teams eventually tend to look like and what's the scenario that people are looking for. And here's some important summary points of this this financial simulation. So, and remember, it's a simulation, obviously. In the first months, there's only costs. 100K revenue is possible somewhere between month 6 and 8. Ratio between these metrics will cross 1 in the year 2. It's possible to reach 3 in year 3. And break-even point on the total investment put into it, it's probably possible somewhere after year 2. And so there are some factors that could change it, like different launch scenarios. For example, if you have some brand you can leverage, some unforeseen market trends, like COVID pandemic really helped a lot of people and they thought it's going to be like that forever. New channels, quick release and quick adoption. There was a moment when influencers were really cashing it, but it's not like that anymore. Working with a different product category, for example, in home and decor, electronics, like for example, the proportion of new clients versus old clients will be different. The advertising cost, revenue dynamics is going to be slightly different. And you can also be very lucky. I mean, I've seen it. Like there's ways. Like there are cases like this. Someone hired young, ambitious people and made it with much less cost. So for the last slide, Arek, I know you guys are there already, but gonna be 1 minute. What are the most common mistakes that I have seen of the companies that are entering this launch phase, kind of summing it up? Unrealistic plans in terms of results and costs, and sometimes just not even approaching this phase of doing a strategy and doing actual simulation to understand what you should get ready for. Prioritizing ROAS in advertising over the CLV and CAC ratio. So, I mean, it's unrealistic in some of the categories to make money on the first purchase, and you should know it. You should be aware of it, because otherwise you're going to inhibit the growth. Underestimating in marketing automation, database building, seen it. Thinking short terms in terms of campaigns, not thinking about brand enough, really. Taking SEO too late, so it can't really offset the cost of advertising. And building a messy ecosystem, something I talked about a lot in the beginning of this event. And hiring mostly juniors. So I said you can be lucky, but you might also be unlucky. You need people who understand actually more at this early stage because the business and the work will be more dynamic and will require connecting business with numbers and technology and campaigns and creatives and everything. So now the question remains, what exactly should you track, test, and measure in the first few crucial months? And that's where smoothly I'm giving the stage to Anek and Max. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I hope I didn't really make you tired with the numbers and all that.